This question is question 4B on the 2017 Junior Cert paper, and it reads, so it's on climate. Explain how any three of the following factors influence climate: latitude, prevailing winds, distance from seas and oceans, altitude and relief. I'm going to talk about latitude, prevailing winds, and distance from seas and oceans. So I'm going to show you my answer here. So this is I have a lot written here for this, but don't let that, kind of make you nervous. There's a lot of information here. Okay, so let's look at the first part. We're going to talk about latitude. So firstly, what is latitude? It's the distance from the equator. Okay, so countries close to the equator, it's very obvious. These have a warm climate. There's warm weather there. This is because that's my statement, as you can see there. This is because the sun's rays have less travelling to do to hit the surface of the earth. These sun rays are concentrated on the small area, right? And that's how you can talk about the areas close to the equator. Then you have the ones that are further away. Countries further away from the equator have a cooler climate, statement 1. Oh yeah, I can see my development up there. Because the sun's rays have further to travel to hit the earth's surface, right? The earth is tilted, so the sun rays are slanted and are spread out over a large area. So, in fairness, there was a lot of information there. This question is worth 12 marks, okay? So you're going to get 4, 4, and 4 for each one, 4, 8, 12, okay? Just a little bit of a diagram down here. This is basically what I just spoke about here. This is the sun, this is the earth. These are the sun's rays hitting the earth. We know the equator is the centre. That's where our equator is. You see the sun's rays, they have far to travel, and they're just going to be kind of concentrated on this area here. And then we have the sun's rays, and these are at the poles. They're travelling a lot further, aren't they? And because the earth is tilted, these rays are slanted, okay? So they're not going to be as concentrated as they are in the middle of the earth. So the next one then is distance from seas and oceans. So the two things you need to talk about for this question is temperate climate and a continental climate. So Ireland is the example for a temperate climate, and that's mainly because we're surrounded by water. We have the Atlantic Ocean, the Irish Sea all around us. So the climate is this climate is experienced in countries that are surrounded by water. Statement 1 there. The sea heats up and cools down much slower than land. These coastal areas experience sea winds and tend to not get very cold winters or very hot summers. The climate is mild. The temperature range is small. So let's say, for example, the temperature in Ireland would be summertime 14 degrees, 15 degrees, but it's not that cold in winter. We're not going to be minus 20. We'd be 1 degree, 0 degrees. It's a small temperature range. It's just the difference between the hot and the cold. So that's that one. And then you're going to go on to your continental, and this is for places that are surrounded by land. So think of continents. So that's just land masses. So climate experience in areas that are surrounded by land, ST1 there. The land heats up in summer but loses heat quickly in winter. These inland areas do not experience sea winds for obvious reasons. They're not really around the sea, okay? Oh yeah, my example up here was Moscow in Russia. I'll write that down for you. They don't experience sea winds, so they tend to have very hot summers and very cold winters. The temperature range is large. So, for example, the temperature in summer could be 30, and then the temperature wintertime could be minus 30, and that's a massive difference. I was going to write down Moscow, Russia here. That's your example. So that's that one. And then finally, prevailing wind. So what is a prevailing wind? It's wind that blows most frequently in an area. I got ST1 for that. The direction of a wind have important effects on the climate of that area. So we'll talk about Ireland, for example. Give an example, it's kind of decent to do that. So in Ireland, we experience a southwesterly prevailing wind. And what is to the west of Ireland? The Atlantic Ocean is there, right? Southwesterly prevailing wind. This blows from the Atlantic Ocean. It brings rain because it absorbs moisture over the Atlantic. So this wind, this air mass, it literally takes moisture from the sea and it holds it, and it brings it over to Ireland, and that's why it rains so much in Ireland. They also carry depressions bringing unsettled weather, rain, hail, sleet, snow, precipitation, all that. And then I kind of just briefly kind of gave, talked about other types of air masses and winds. So southerly winds bring warm tropical weather because they come from low latitudes. That means near the equator. If it's a low latitude, it's near the equator. If it's a high latitude, it's the opposite. It's high up. It's at the poles. It's far, far away from the equator. Like I'm going to say here, northerly winds bring cold polar climates as they come from high latitudes, far away from the equator. Easterly winds are dry because, so just visualize a map in your head there. Easterly winds, that's where Moscow is, Russia. They're dry because they can't absorb. Here I've written that wrong. Easterly winds are dry because they can absorb little moisture over large land masses. That's kind of gamma way I've written that. They're over land masses, so they cannot absorb water because there's no water there for them. So I know there's a lot of information there. Check out, I have a surplus mark here. There's actually a ton of surplus marks in this. So don't worry too much, but that is like a model answer for that question. Don't freak out. If actually, just talk about this again for a second. Distance from seas and oceans. If you know temperate climate, you don't just try and think of the opposite then for continental climate. Okay?